why charts is I can basically look at anything and start formulating an opinion around it. And the opinion doesn't have to be, is this a good company or a bad company? That's bottoms up stock picking. That's a different thing. It's, is this a decent investment or not a decent investment? Or is there an opportunity to make money out of this or not? And that's what it is. And I learned that trick. I realized I'm a very visual person. I see everything in my head. So I'm always carrying around a mental model and I see it. It's kind of a 3D thing. And so charts just fit into that super easy. And then I realized that almost everybody I know in macro, the kind of investing that I do, which is we look at kind of all asset classes around the world and their linkages to global economies. Almost everybody who comes into that space comes at it via charts, because there's simply too much to analyze and too much to hold in your head, that the charts make it super helpful. About October 2020, that I had been following the Ethereum chart and I looked at it and thought, this looks like it's going to break out. I then looked at the Bitcoin Ethereum chart and I realized that it was forming a pattern that looked like it was going to break out. So I'm using my probabilistic odds and charts, which is what we talked about at the beginning, and thought, this looks interesting. So I post it on Twitter. And what happens was an immense backlash.
I know that.
How dare you?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's interesting. So when somebody does something like that to say, I refuse you to think along those lines, I will always go down that, I'm a contrarian by nature.
Me too.
So then I started looking at Bitcoin. Then I looked at the chart of Ethereum when it had the same number of wallet addresses as Bitcoin. And I realized it's exactly the same price. I'm like, and the charts look identical. I'm like, And then I started looking at other assets and they started looking like they were Bitcoin, but from the 2017 cycle, and Bitcoin looked like, and Ethereum looked like Bitcoin from the 2017 cycle. And I'm like, why do these all look the same? And then I realized that it was to do with Metcalfe's law and network adoption models, and that they were all following the same path. That's when I started allocating to Bitcoin, Ethereum, because I now understood a pricing model, understood the whole space in more detail, and I realized that almost nobody else was seeing it in these terms. And then as I started getting conviction in the price, I was being rewarded for taking the bet, I started switching more and more out. And then my final anticipation was the action that happened today, which was finally the ETH Bitcoin chart broke that 0.08 level, which I had been expecting because I knew that chart pattern. That's the classic wedge pattern that I keep talking about.
Yeah.
I knew that the probability was extremely high. So therefore I had to reduce my Bitcoin as much as possible. Not that I don't like Bitcoin, to your point. It's because I loved Ethereum more at this point. And there'll be another point in another couple of years where I'll be poo-pooing Ethereum because I find something else with a bigger opportunity. I'm an investor. So just to put it in perspective, the network growth is currently at about 113% a year across the whole digital asset ecosystem. Right, at 150, 200 million users, we get to 1 billion people by 2024. That's the nature of exponential maths.
Yeah.
Now, 1 billion people from here, we can't get our heads around it.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't think we can have the 80% fall.
Exactly. And it's better to have that kind of Wyckoff-like, almost jagged upward move.
Yeah, and I do think we will probably have that 90% fall in NFTs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely
because there is no institutional adoption of NFTs yet.
Yeah,
yet.
Very, very true.
It's retail. I actually still see ETH potentially, the small probability upside is that it hits 40,000 by the summer. That's because of the staking cycle and how the charts look, and using the log chart, extending it forwards, and a number of things give me that. It's not my base case. My base case would be 20,000 ETH by March at the latest.
Yeah.
I think the ratio is changing, and it's going to go to something significantly different than, so if it's 12 now, it probably goes to 7, 6. So I think that's what that ETH Bitcoin chart is telling me. So I think that relationship's going to shift over time.
6 is flippening territory.
Yes, exactly. I think we're going to, my guess is this cycle, we don't get a proper elongated bear market. And by an elongated bear market, I'm not talking down 80, I'm talking about down 50 and it stays down for 9 months and bores everybody out, kind of thing. I think that happens when the flippening happens, and we'll readjust again and Bitcoin will become the larger asset. I think the flippening has not a high probability, a decent probability.
Yeah.
In the next 9 months. Of course, ETH's dominance, like Bitcoin's dominance, will fall over time because new technology comes into the space and they solve different problems and they have different orders of centralization versus decentralization. There's trade-offs, and that's absolutely fine. So the Bitcoin dominance is going to diminish over time. ETH dominance will diminish over time. Sol's dominance versus others will diminish over time because this space is changing in structure. So I don't have an issue with that. I'm not an ETH person. I'm just like, this is the best horse to back, best risk-adjusted return. I'm a crypto maximalist. I totally believe that this is the future of all digital value. But my job is to select which horse to back and when. My job is not to come at this with a philosophy of it can only be one. You know, this is not Highlander here. We're in the investment business, and we're also in the business of changing the world's business models and, you know, distributing wealth and all of that stuff. So let it play out how it plays out.
But in terms of your investment conviction right now, in terms of your position, with your options, you're 82% ETH, which is very heavy conviction in my opinion.
Yes, and I think that Solana will outperform ETH in this cycle.
Yeah.
And I think that Terra will outperform ETH. So why don't I have all my money in those? Because I have less certainty, because the network effects are less pronounced. So therefore I have to have a smaller bet.
Yep, exactly.
But I don't think ETH stops going up. The whole space is going up 100x over the next 10 years. So, you know, you can back a lot of different horses and still make money. I think it is part of the Lindy. So it's another test. What is the robustness of the network? The network is actually not the technology, it's the people that use it. That's the key point here. So if it continues to attract nodes and interconnections between the nodes in its new format, then it's survived yet another Lindy test. We saw this exact same thing with Bitcoin in 2017 with the forking wars. And that was the biggest Lindy test. In fact, it threw me off Bitcoin. I sold, you know, I bought Bitcoin at 200 back in 2013, sold it in 2017 for 2,500 early because of this. And I'm like, is it going to survive this S-curve moment or not? And I wasn't sure. So I couldn't commit capital to it. Now, is Ethereum going to survive this S-curve moment? The probability is high because of the network effects and how robust they are, but it's not certain. So would I want to reduce my ETH exposure after we've gone into this? Probably. Are there other opportunities in different areas in crypto? Of course.